Good afternoon, I'm Giovanni Dennis with the Midday News. A special welcome if you're joining us online at onespotmedia.com. Face-to-face classes will go ahead as scheduled. The insistence from Education Minister Favour Williams, responding to calls from the Jamaica Teachers Association to end face-to-face classes based on the recent spike in COVID-19 cases. Mrs. Williams also says the primary exit profile exams will go ahead as scheduled. Shamila Pullen reports.
On Sunday, President of the Jamaica Teachers Association, Jasford Gabriel, called for the immediate closure of all schools conducting face-to-face classes. But Education Minister Favour Williams says, while she notes the call and understands the concerns, there is no need for such an action at this time. Mrs. Williams said with about 20% of schools teaching face-to-face, the ministry is vigilant in doing spot checks in these schools. She said the ministry gets a daily update from the schools, and where there's a COVID-related situation, they're satisfied with how the institutions have handled the cases.
A call to have all our schools that are back face-to-face to cease operating is not one that we are supporting right now. We also watch the COVID numbers. We work very closely with the Ministry of Health and Wellness. We take their directive. And so far, that directive is to diligently and religiously follow the COVID-19 protocols. Our observation is that the schools are abiding by these protocols.
The JTA president also raised issues with the primary exit profile PEP exams, which is to be administered in March. Mr. Gabriel said with many grade 6 students missing classes since March last year, he thinks alternatives should be given so they can advance to the high school level. But Mrs. Williams said the exams will go on as planned.
So you would have noticed that the exam was originally scheduled to be held this month in February. We would have pushed that back by a month, so it will now be held in March, and that is one component of the PEP, that's the ability test. That does not depend on learned knowledge. It's just general knowledge of the student. So right now that is scheduled for March, the end of March, the 25th.
However, the Education Minister acknowledges that there are some schools and parents who are overly cautious about face-to-face classes. Mrs. Williams said she had taken note, but is reminding them of the various flexible learning methods available.
We still have online, we still have the audiovisual where lessons are broadcast on TV, aired on radio. Students still have their textbooks, their worksheets, and can be in touch with their teachers. So all the modalities are still available. So if there's a situation where the school does not feel comfortable about the face-to-face for whatever reason, that all the other modalities are available to the school.
Shamila Pullen, TVJ News.
Meanwhile, the spike continues as Jamaica recorded another 213 confirmed cases on Sunday. This has pushed the total confirmed cases to 17,298. Kingston and St. Andrew recorded most of the cases, followed by St. Catherine and Manchester. Meanwhile, 159 persons are hospitalized. 16 are critically ill. The death toll remains at 358. The National Chest Hospital in Kingston has resumed blood collection during normal business hours. The Health Ministry on Saturday announced that blood collection would be limited to Saturdays to facilitate deployment of staff to the blood bank, which had recorded a cluster of COVID-19 cases. In a media release, the ministry says blood collection will resume at the National Chest Hospital Mondays 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. and 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. on Saturdays. It says while walk-in donors are welcomed, persons should make an online appointment at nbts.gov.jm and click on the Appointment Pre-Register tab. The donor will receive an email confirmation with the date and time to visit the collection center. At least one financial commentator believes the government could delay the implementation of new wages for the public sector. This as Jamaica's economy continues to reel from the negative impact of COVID-19. Sandy Williams reports.
Speaking on Radio Jamaica's That's a Wrap yesterday, financial commentator Orville Johnson said while public sector workers are looking forward to salary increases, they might have to temper their expectations. His insights come as he thinks the government could seek to delay implementation of new wage scales for at least another year amid the economic fallout from the COVID-19 pandemic. The Finance Ministry has been carrying out a review of compensation for all persons paid by the state and had promised a proposal would be ready by December. However, there has been no update on the review, even as public sector unions get ready to begin salary negotiations for the new contract period.
They were doing a comprehensive study, as I understand it, so that now they would now establish some part of the value of various jobs and to have that system implemented. So it has now come in the midst of a pandemic where the government revenues are down maybe about 15% and expenses are up. So what I perhaps see happening is maybe they might kick it down the road maybe a year or so because the environment is still very fluid. The GDP was down the third quarter 10%. And although vaccinations are coming in and there's some hope in terms of us returning to normal, we're still in a new normal situation.
For President General of the Bustamante Industrial Trade Union, Cavan Gill, job security will be an important aspect of the wage negotiations this year.
There's going to be a high emphasis on job security and job retention. Education, training, development of skills and enabling employees to acquire new skills is going to be very critical, both in the private and the public sector.
Mr. Gale says while he expects negotiations to be challenging, he's hoping some recognition could be given to public sector workers for their service during the pandemic.
What it is going to require would be a collaborative effort between the trade unions and an understanding of the workers that we represent, and a cohesive approach by government in terms of these negotiations. Public sector workers would have stood out during the pandemic, and we believe that ought to be recognized, and that we can come away with a win-win situation for the trade unions representing the workers and also the government.
For financial commentator Mr. Johnson, some jobs could be on the line as well.
We always knew the so-called fourth industrial revolution, which involved digitization, was coming. It was always on the card. What COVID has done is to bring it forward. So what we know, we know popularly talk about the business model. A lot of business models are going to be changing, and it's going to have an impact on some of the jobs.
Sandy Williams, TVJ News.
And it's now time for a break here on the Midday News, but please stay with us. We'll have more stories when we return. Welcome back, and we're continuing the news. Minister of National Security Dr. Horace Chang feels the Independent Commission of Investigations, INDECOM, should review how it records fatal shootings by the security forces. He reasoned that some situations are extraordinary and pointed to the case involving cop killer Damien Hamilton, who was shot and killed in Corville Gardens.
It's all inappropriate to put all fatal shootings together. You know, there's something inappropriate when you take the killing of Mr. Hamilton by the police when he had just killed three policemen. And they tracked him down and engaged him. And he, in fact, fired on the police during that time. And that comes up as one of the fatal shootings. So there need to be a relook at how you interpret these particular things.
INDECOM reported that 115 fatal shootings were attributed to the security forces in 2020, an increase from 2019 when there were 86. The INDECOM report further stated that 12 civilians were shot and killed by the Jamaica Defense Force JDF in 2020, compared to 1 in 2019. It was the highest number of fatal shootings attributed to the JDF in any year since 2016.
Involved in joint operation the police. And we have been increasing the activity because we have to get the numbers on the road. And as I said, where you have 4,000 shooting a year. We have some engagement, and they work with the police, especially out of the enhanced security measures area. So if you are intercepting a gunman, the chance that a military patrol could be involved.
Residents of Troja in St. Catherine say they have to travel too far to access the nearest police station. Their concern comes amid rising crime. The residents are appealing for the matter to be addressed. Krista Campbell has their story.
In a remote area of St. Catherine called Troja, a new police station building locked up. No one inside. The building has been under construction after the old station was closed over 25 years ago. But now residents are asking when the new building will be done so they can start using it.
It has started a few years back. They said it will be completed in a few months or a year, and it's 3 years now. And the refurbishing has started and stopped a few times.
Major crimes, particularly murders, are not rampant in these parts of St. Catherine. Still, residents stress the need for their own police station. They say Troja is too large an area to be operating without one, and the closest one is in Riversdale.
And sometimes the one vehicle that station has is elsewhere dealing with other matters. So sometimes if you even call, take a long time for some police personnel to come to our plight. We have a few predatory lawsuits, we have a few shop breaking, and we don't want major crime to come to this community before we get back the stations.
In a telephone interview with TVJ News, Councillor for the Troja Division, William Sital, conceded that the low crime rate in the area cannot be taken for granted.
The business community and the returning residents who would like to come back home still see a serious situation whereby the security of the area should be intact before they start to put down any form of fixed assets or business in the area.
He says the building is 85% complete, and so far it cost a little more than the $3.2 million donated by the Tourism Enhancement Fund. He's hoping the National Security Ministry will allocate the rest of money in the next budget to complete the work.
The fixtures and the furnitures and the roadway leading up to it supposed to be cleaned and paved, and there's an outside building which is used as the canteen area and to store the motor vehicle parts like the Land Rover which was there, and also there was the outside bathrooms which if you incarcerate a prisoner he will go to have a bath or go to use the toilet. Now that is the section which needs to be completely repaired now.
Krista Campbell, TVJ News.
Member of Parliament for Westmoreland Western, Moreland Wilson, says he will be working with the National Works Agency to implement new measures to reduce motor vehicle crashes along the Norman Manley Boulevard in Negril. According to Mr. Wilson, residents and hoteliers have been complaining about the dilapidated median along the boulevard, which they claim is responsible for several collisions.
Since I become MP in September, we have about 15 accidents that I can recall anecdotally, which took place on the boulevard as a result of these accidents. In the past 3 weeks, we have one unfortunate death as a result of the median. So they are very, very difficult to see in the nights when you're driving. In fact, sometimes it's even difficult to see them in the day. And for persons, visitors who are not familiar with the area, they would not have known that these street traffic calmers, speed calmers are in the road. So they result in accidents.
Mr. Wilson says since January there have been 3 motor vehicle crashes and 1 death as a result of the median. He says the median has not been maintained and therefore should be removed and speed bumps installed. He's hoping this will be done within the next 6 months.
Negril has grown tremendously and significantly over the past 20 years. And what you find is that the boulevard itself is more of a pedestrian-orientated venue than something main thoroughfare, you put it, to just for people to just transit. So we should really look at the overall development plan for Negril as a long-term solution to this. But at the moment, for a more short-term, we're thinking that we could put in speed bumps or speed strips so we could reduce the speed on the boulevard and take out the median totally. we are hopeful that in terms of the timeline for the project, that NWA will, within possibly the first 6 months of this year, undertake this project. And we would have some reasonable outcomes in providing a solution for the residents and for road users.
To news in the region, an alleged plot to overthrow Haiti's president led to the arrest of 24 people, including a Supreme Court judge and a senior police officer on Sunday. Protesters took to the streets of the capital, Port-au-Prince, and other towns over President Jovenel Moïse's refusal to step down. Moïse has been accused of unconstitutionally extending his term and being a dictator who has done little to solve the worst economic crisis in the Western Hemisphere. The arrests come after leading opposition figures announced a plan to replace Moïse with a new head of state instead of waiting for general elections scheduled for September. According to Haiti's constitution, presidential terms last 5 years. Haiti's Superior Court of Justice and the country's opposition movement say that Moïse, who won a runoff vote in 2016, was due to step down on Sunday. But Moïse insists he should get 1 more year because he was not actually sworn in until 2017. Moïse, who has ruled by decree since mid-January, has stated that he would hand over power to the winner of the elections but would not step down until his term expires in 2022. Further afield, South Africa has postponed the rollout of the Oxford-AstraZeneca vaccine amid questions over its effectiveness on the variant. More from the CNN.
South Africa has halted the rolling out of the AstraZeneca vaccination in South Africa after results show that it offers minimal protection against mild and moderate COVID-19 cases, specifically from the variant that was first identified in the country. The variant B1351 is a lot more transmissible, but very little was known about this. Trials have been conducted for many months now. Now, the AstraZeneca vaccination showed to be 75% viable against COVID-19 until the end of October 2020. When the variant started becoming a lot more dominant in South Africa, researchers say that they weren't able to replicate those results. Where we're sitting right now, 1 million doses of AstraZeneca vaccine have arrived in the country. The government now is halting that rolling out. Take a listen to what the health minister, Willem Kiese, had to say.
So it's a temporary issue that we have to hold on to AstraZeneca. It is temporary until we figure out these issues. What are the next steps supposed to be? When we know those steps, then of course we bring it back.
They have also voiced their disappointment at these latest results. The hope was that AstraZeneca vaccination and the aggressive rollout, which was planned over the next month, would have a significant impact for essential workers, for health workers in the country. Right now, the hope is that they will expedite the use and the trials of the Johnson & Johnson vaccination, and also looking at other vaccine options that perhaps will be able to target the variant. The variant now has moved beyond South African borders and found in other African countries and around the world. And the big question plaguing many people and, of course, researchers and countries is just how viable these vaccines will be against the mutations that we're seeing taking hold of the world.
To news in sports now, Jamaican Nkrumah Bonner fell just short of a debut century, but it was another debutant in Kyle Myers who grabbed the headlines with an unbeaten double ton as the West Indies recorded a historic 3-wicket win over Bangladesh in their opening test in Chattogram on Sunday. Renardo Brown has the details.
When the Windies started the 5th and final day, needing another 285 runs for victory, with 7 wickets in hand, not many gave the Caribbean side a chance of winning. However, debutants Kyle Myers and Jamaican Nkrumah Bonner seized the opportunity to make a name for themselves. The pair, which had added 51 runs overnight, dropped anchor and got to work at chipping away at the target. Myers was the first to bring up 50 as the left-hander imposed himself on the Bangladeshi bowlers.
50 as well for Kyle Myers.
The Barbadian was well into the 90s when Bonner had his turn in the spotlight, reaching his first Test half-century.
A well-compiled 50 for Nkrumah Bonner, his first in Test match cricket.
17 runs later, Mears had the Windies players on their feet as he became the 14th West Indian to score a century on debut.
100 on debut for the man from Barbados, Kyle Mays.
And by the time the Windies got to tea with another 129 runs to get and still 7 wickets in hand, there was belief that a win was now on the cards for the visitors. On the resumption, again Bonner and Mears started positively before the Jamaican misjudged the delivery from Taijul Islam to be dismissed for 86. Another Jamaican, Jermaine Blackwood, was on the offensive from the get-go, but his innings was short-lived as the host found themselves back in the game with 5 wickets to get and the Windies still 103 runs adrift. However, Mears found another reliable partner in Joshua Da Silva, who was playing the anchor role, allowing Mears to freeze arms. The Bajan kept finding and clearing the boundary as he became the first player to reach 150 in the 4th innings of a test. And 150 quickly became 200, and just like that, Mears became only the 6th player to reach a double century on debut and the 2nd West Indian behind Jamaican Lawrence Rowe. Another 2 dismissals followed, and by then the Windies were within touching distance of a memorable victory, which was achieved in the 128th over as the Caribbean side got to 395 for 7, the highest run chase in a test in Asia. Mears was left unbeaten on 210 as Maida San Miraz ended with 4 for 113. Windies captain Craig Brathwaite was pleased with the fight from his players as they took a 1-0 lead in the 2-game series.
Well, I mean, from beginning of the test match, I have full confidence in this team. And today I was in one spot today. Obviously enjoyed the batting of Kyle and Kuma. But the dressing room was quite happy. We all believe we could get the job done. We all supported. The guys at the crease, did what they had to do. Simple as that.
The second test will be played in Dhaka from February 10 to 15.
Rally round the West Indies. And that's the Midday News. I'm Giovanni Dennis. Join us at 7 for Primetime News. On behalf of the news, sports and production teams, have a good afternoon.